What's going on, everyone? Jeremy here from The Quartering. Happy Wednesday, March 17th. If you're celebrating St. Patrick's Day, hope you have fun. Be safe. Remember, a taxi ride or an Uber ride was always the best option if you've been out there celebrating, as I know many of you have been. The Disney versus the fandom story seems to continue to be spreading out. And there was an article in Forbes that I think I completely missed, an actually fair representation of the situation by a mainstream media personality. Remember, when Disney decided to fire Gina Carano, they didn't need any help from the media because they didn't need to ask for any help because everybody in the mainstream media agreed with it because she dared to have a different opinion than them. As of even yesterday, Disney continues to screw with Gina Carano. I reported on this yesterday. Disney pulls Gina Carano episode of Running Wild with Bear Grylls, saying Disney is clearly going out of their way to erase any trace of Gina Carano from the company's history over her firing from The Mandalorian. Not only has production ceased on the Cara Dune Funko Pop, but Hasbro has discontinued action figures bearing the likeness of the actress, which is going to cause her to lose out on plenty of residuals and royalty checks, while any other of her merchandise stands to increase greatly in value among traders and collectors. There have been reports that Cara Dune won't be involved in any Star Wars-related media from here on out, essentially wiping her from the entire expanded mythology. But it looks as though Carano's presence is also being removed from the wider Disney world, as well as not just a galaxy far, far away. Of course, we talked about now Bear Grylls with his show. They've made no comment on it, of course, but earlier this year, the actress took to social media to reflect on her experience filming a future outing of survival series Running Wild with Bear Grylls, which was set to air on Disney-owned Discovery Channel. They have now pulled that. After 2 weeks ago, the CEO of Disney saying that, well, Disney isn't right-leaning or left-leaning, which is an absolute hilarious lie. The only people that believe this agree with the decision to fire Gina Carano. And this article by Gene Del Vecchio, a Hollywood entertainment contributor over at Forbes, does a great job laying it out. Disney's firing of Gina Carano is confusing and hypocritical, lacking sound management. These are the same points that I made too. The idea that you would just respond to Twitter outrage and let one of your most popular stars of your most popular show find out that they were fired via Twitter is a lack of leadership. They start the article by saying, I've been sitting on this article for a while, allowing my opinion to form. That's something that many companies don't do enough of these days. Instead, they often rush to conclusions too fast, yielding to the views of a few vocal members of the community rather than allowing time and consideration to inform decisions. The latest example is Disney's firing of Gina Carano from The Mandalorian in February. She's a conservative who is not shy about sharing her views. The latest being a comment that compared conservatives being silenced and canceled to what happened to the Jews during the events that led up to World War II. An exaggerated comparison? Yes. But enough to fire her? Doubtful. She's more guilty of a bad comparison. Gina should have likened today's conservative cancel culture to the 1950s congressional hearings held to expose entertainment people who were members or sympathizers to the Communist Party. 10 influential actors and screenwriters were eventually jailed and blacklisted by major movie studios for denouncing the hearings and refusing to name those who had expressed communist sympathies. That's a better comparative. Ironically, when Disney fired Gina for her opinions, it inadvertently proved her point. We can disagree as to whether Disney was justified or not firing Gina, but one thing is clear. Disney's management of its social responsibility persona is woefully flawed. To begin, the company's approach is confusing. Many assert that Pedro Pascal, star of The Mandalorian, offered similar analogies that Carano did, though with a liberal bent. When he shared a now deleted Instagram post comparing Donald Trump voters to the bad guys from WW2, Pascal kept his job. Carano did not. Disney's inconsistent approach led outsiders to suspect that Disney leans left, something that Bob Chapek denied at a recent shareholder meeting by saying, "I don't really see Disney as characterizing left or right, but management cannot afford to treat employees differently for similar actions." It makes Chapek's comments appear disingenuous. The company needs a universally consistent approach for its universal values. And, I've been hearing some grumblings, and, there may be some truth to this, that, Gina might actually have, a wrongful termination suit option because of the just glaring double standard, the glaring and obvious double standard with her co-star, Pedro Pascal. Disney's actions also appear hypocritical. At the same shareholders meeting, Bob Chapek went on to say that Disney believes in the values of respect, decency, integrity, and inclusion. And we seek to not only have them in how we operate, but in the content that we make. And I think that's a world we all want to live in, and blah, blah, blah. That's a noble goal. Well said, but Disney shapes and declares these aspirations for U.S. consumption. It's turned a blind eye to China when the company filmed Mulan in the same Chinese province where the government forced millions of Muslims into internment camps. Disney went on to thank several government bodies in the film's credits. The signals that human rights and social responsibility are fine as long as they do not cost Disney any money in its important markets. Disney never had an adequate response. Disney's approach is dangerous. Canceling people for their views is the proverbial slippery slope. The maxim, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it," is losing ground to rather frightening alternative of, "I disapprove of what you say and I will cancel you for it." In the past, organizations that needed to distance themselves from employees' controversial opinions would make a public statement that the employees' opinions are theirs alone and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Remember when we used to see that stuff? Done. Banishment was reserved for more egregious behaviors like debilitating substance problems and actual crimes. The 50s blacklisting experience reinforced our belief that speech and political affiliation need to be protected, but we seem to have forgotten that lesson. And ultimately, that's where this is heading. I mean, that's the world we live in now. And, both sides of the aisle are guilty of participating in this stuff. It's sickening. And you know what? Sometimes I get sucked into it, and really a lot of it starts and ends on Twitter. The more I think about Twitter and its impact on society, the more I look back and reflect as I'm probably no longer in a growth phase of my career, and now I'm more in the, hopefully I can extend my current position as long as reasonably possible type position. I've a matured in my channel growth. I think about, okay, what are the things that I actually want in my life right now? And Twitter's really not one of those. As companies cancel people for their opinions, it feeds a dangerous cycle. The more they cancel, the more they're emboldened the mob to target more people and organizations. Then repeat. Disney and many other organizations are playing very dangerous games out of fear, partisanship, and or misplaced sincerity. The beast they helped create and indulge may eventually devour them. Organizations need a more thoughtful system, not knee-jerk reaction, to guide most decisions in terms of who gets fired. Case in point, a new poll conducted by Public Opinion Strategies found that 58% of people opposed Carano being fired, but that jumped to a whopping 72% when they saw the post that she was fired for, leaving only 28% of people who felt Disney was justified. It makes Disney appear to be exaggerating when it later said that the social media posts were abhorrent and unacceptable in how they denigrated people based on their cultural and religious identities. Disney could counter that Carano was terminated not merely for her last post, but due to an accumulation of previous posts where, among other things, she reportedly mocked wearing a mask during lockdowns and suggested questions about the election. But if that criteria were applied nationwide tonight, unemployment would spike to as much as 50% tomorrow morning. And though she was accused of being phobic for mocking the use of pronouns, which has become more common in that community, she stated that, "I stand against bullying, especially the most vulnerable, and freedom to choose." But that wasn't enough for some, so she became a target. Achieving social responsibility is truly a noble goal, but Disney, along with many other organizations, need to fix its haphazard approach to that meanders aimlessly through the cancel culture minefield. What a great piece. Gene Del Vecchio really encapsulates, my position and a lot of people's positions in terms of how this whole thing was handled. It's frustrating that cancel culture continues to be this thing, even though everyone knows what it is. Like it's like passé now. Like oh, who's getting canceled? Or uh-oh, don't cancel me. I don't think that this is something as a society that we should be accepting, that we should just be acting like, hey, this is a normal part of everyday life, that people's opinions in which I do not like should allow people to strike them, which we saw on Twitter talking about Steven Crowder yesterday. It's absolute insanity. It's a beta mindset, absolutely, omega mindset. But, the idea that we can't possibly live in a world with varying opinions. A long time ago, a lot of people, husband and wife, look, my parents vote differently. My parents have canceled out their votes for the last 50 years. And guess what? It doesn't matter. I have lots of married couple friends that both, skew differently politically, but it doesn't matter because it's really not that important in the everyday person's life. We need to add some perspective and say like, hey, am I letting this culture of toxicity and cancellation dominate my life? Am I just a cog in the machine of a greater narrative? Because I think when you partake in this stuff, that's exactly what you are. And you're due to just wake up one day and ultimately feel unfulfilled and realize that you've wasted countless hours, days, months, or even years engaging in what you thought was a righteous cause, when at the end of the day, you were just a tool for those who seek to control you. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.